I think I know most of you on the call, but again, for those of you I don't know, my name is Abigail Salazzo. I'm the Chapters and Leadership Manager here with Anfp. I just want to thank everybody for taking the time out of their day to join us for today's chapter chat. And of course, as a reminder, in order to avoid any background noise or distractions, we ask that you please mute your phone unless you have a question or a comment. And of course, feel free to use the chat function to ask questions or add comments if you've logged into the web portion of the program. So let's go ahead and get started. Today we're going to go over essential pieces of how to run a meeting effectively. And you may hear me reference terms that are really associated typically with board or committee meetings. Just note that some of these tips can apply to most any kind of meeting that you'll be holding. And really there are three major keys to a successful meeting that we're going to concentrate on today: preparation, engagement, and follow-through. So we're going to go ahead and start with preparation and dive a little bit deeper here. Much of the success of a meeting is a result of being prepared. All members should come prepared to the meeting. And hopefully the president or the chair has prepared the agenda and all reports have been submitted prior to the meeting and then distributed to the members. This will allow all members to read through the reports ahead of time and become familiar with the meeting topics that will be discussed. The president may send out a request for agenda items or reports prior to the meeting to ensure that all concerns are addressed and progress reports are given. An agenda is really an effective tool. It really helps to keep the meeting running on time. It also ensures that all topics are given adequate time to be discussed and addressed. It's also a useful tool for the secretary to use as a guide in order to take minutes of the meeting. Within the agenda, there are several pieces that should always be included. One is the call to order. This takes place at the start of the meeting, and it can be officially noted in the minutes, just the start time of the meeting. And at this time, the president and the chair can also ask members if they have any changes to the agenda or anything that needs to be amended at that time. You'll also want a roll call, which is simply just taking note of those who are present. You could also note who is absent as well, or if you have staff there present as well. Next, you'll cover the previous meeting's minutes, and you can ask if there's any questions or concerns or changes at that time in regards to those minutes. However, if you do have any questions or there are changes to the minutes, it really should be brought to the board or committee's attention prior to the meeting. But again, it is acceptable to do at this time. Then you'll want to add the old business or committee reports. And this is the portion of the meeting when committees or members are able to report on the status of the project. It's really for informational purposes or clarification if necessary. Next, you'll have new business or action items. And these are items that require discussion and the members to determine what are the next steps or action to be taken, and this also includes voting. This is where you'll vote on anything that a member is bringing to the board's attention. And then, of course, you want to allow time for open discussion. This is an opportunity for members or meeting participants to add anything noteworthy to the meeting. So this could include something like an article of interest or a CE course coming up locally. You could also make note of anniversaries or milestones or other important announcements during this time too. And then, of course, adjournment. This is when you're going to officially calling the meeting to a close. And here is a sample of an agenda. This is a template that we have available in Anfp Connect, and it's under the sample templates in the volunteer resources portion of Connect. You'll see here we have the date and the time, the location at the top, and then, of course, the call to order, roll call, and all the necessary agenda items in here. And here I just want to note the time that's allotted to each. Certainly with any topic that's going to require a lot of discussion, you want to be sure that you're allowing adequate time to have that discussion with the members, and that everybody will have the opportunity to speak if they so choose to. So I just want to pause here, ask if there's any questions. We'll check chat. Any questions on agendas? Pretty straightforward. I hope everybody's using something similar to this template here, or whatever perhaps works, but we do want to ensure that most of these items are included each time there is a board meeting. Okay, so no questions, and again, feel free to use your chat function if you'd rather not speak up. We'll keep moving on. Once the agenda has been created, it's ideal that all meeting participants are given the opportunity to review it prior to the meeting, as well as add any additional items or ask any questions if necessary. Participants should also review the meeting minutes prior or reports before the meeting so they're knowledgeable about the topics or what had been discussed previously. And by reviewing these documents, it will allow you to prepare your points of discussion, formulate questions, or be able to address any concerns at that time. Now, for those of you creating or submitting reports, they should consist of a few items, including the month and year, name of the committee of the task force, or even perhaps the member position that you're holding. Then for the body of the report, list the status update of projects or tasks using bullet points. During the discussion portion of the meeting is a time when you can note or you could speak about the details, but the report should really be straightforward and to the point. Any questions about reports at this time? Fairly straightforward. And even at the national level within our own board reports, they are kept very short and simple and to the point. Again, any details really should be addressed during the discussion. Okay, let's keep going. On the screen, you'll see a few tips that will facilitate your success in leading, communicating, and facilitating the work among the board. The chair serves as both the leader of the committee and as the skillful facilitator of the discussion while using Robert's rules or parliamentary procedure, and we're going to cover the parliamentary procedure just a little bit later in the call. The chair facilitates the work of the committee or perhaps the board, provides oversight, and it ensures the goals and objectives are met. Presidents or chairs can stimulate discussion and let other members work out the ideas amongst themselves. This may take some awkward silence at time that not feel comfortable right away, and this is just dependent on their own personalities mixed with those of others. So you're going to have stronger personalities, and you just want to ensure that they're not the only ones dominating the conversation. Additionally, chairs or presidents or perhaps a leader of a task force should delegate and monitor work assignments of their members and move members towards participation and decision making. And they can do this by trying to prevent one-sided discussions, which can also help you create a positive environment, make others feel comfortable, and really everybody feel comfortable and willing to engage in the discussion. We want to recognize each other's contributions and hard work and actively listen and provide constructive criticism to share our own experiences when that's appropriate. And of course, as the key leader, either as the chair or the president, we should be the ones guiding the meeting as well. As for the other members, you can support the president or each other by being responsible to each other as well as the organization, and by working collaboratively with others. While difference of opinions are given, there are still ways to work with one another to ultimately achieve the goal or complete the project. And I think I just got ahead of myself here. My apologies. And then, of course, as leaders, we're responsible for managing and executing work, projects, and tasks as assigned. And, of course, we want to be the ones that are engaging in discussion, and we want to feel confident in doing that. So don't be afraid to add to the discussion, as everybody's opinion is worthy. There should be not one single person that is constantly dominating the conversation. Everybody should have the opportunity to speak. And of course, with difference of opinions, be respectful of others' ideas and their own opinions, just as we ask of them. So are there any questions about meeting engagement? Has anybody had difficulties? No? Okay. Does anybody have any best practices they'd like to share in terms of engagement? How do you get your members to contribute to the conversation? Anyone? Kind of funny, we're talking about engagement. I don't have anybody engaging.
Call them out by name.
What's that?
Call them out by name. Say, so-and-so, what do you think?
Is that a typical best practice of yours? That's a good idea. I know some people are very forthright, some are not, and that's okay. We want to be sure that we're fostering that environment for them. However, whether or not it's a popular opinion or idea or not, giving everybody the opportunity to speak.
When you're having a meeting, if you see new members that are just the first time there, you could actually invite them into the conversation and ask them what they're thinking.
Absolutely. Absolutely. They can always decline to speak, but, you know, it's always nice to have people engaged. And I think, you know, for those people that maybe are a little hesitant to speak up, it gives them a little bit of encouragement when they see others doing so.
I like to make eye contact with the person that's looking away when you're asking for volunteers or you're asking for feedback. I like to find the person that's looking the opposite direction because they don't want to be called, and I usually call that person. And they generally have some of the best feedback.
Great. So you're putting them on the spot.
Yep.
Great. Great. Okay. We have some suggestions coming in here through chat. You know, Sean says to invite them into the conversation, just like she said. Absolutely. You know, ask them, you know, what are their thoughts on the subject. And we have from Donna, said they want to be part of the state they belong to and have a spokesperson for that area. And she said that works well for us. And students have great ideas as well. I agree. This is sort of an untapped resource of ours. We're hoping to capture that a little bit more, not only within our national membership, but at the chapter level. You know, sometimes they might need a little hand-holding. Sometimes they might need some encouragement in order to speak up and, you know, just really feel confident that whatever they have to say is valid and it's worthy and it's worthy of being heard. Okay, great. Well, those are all great suggestions. Anything else there? No? All right, let's keep moving on then. So next we're going to discuss meeting follow-through. When working through the agenda and determining next steps, ensure clear directions are given to the person or the persons involved with completing the task or taking the next steps. We want to ensure everyone involved really understands what needs to happen next. And of course, if necessary, we want to assign somebody who's the key contact or the point person. The board member will then be responsible for follow-up to ensure that the project or task is progressing as necessary. Additionally, minutes from the meeting should be completed and turned around fairly quickly, ideally within 24 hours. I know sometimes that's a lot to ask, but for me, I know my typical practice is to try to do that if I can, just so that everything's fresh in my mind and I can be sure that it gets jotted down. This is typically something that secretary handles. So for them, I would recommend that they send out a draft of the minutes either to the president or the executive committee, allow them time to review, send back any changes, and then of course post a final copy to the entire membership with those changes or edits. And then just a few other things to keep in mind as you're working as a board or committee or really as an entire chapter membership, how often you'd like to meet. And then, of course, creating the schedule or posting meeting dates at least a few months in advance or earlier if possible. This will ensure that everyone will be able to plan ahead and participate. And then, of course, it also allows members plenty of time to prepare. And, of course, as board members or committee members, we should be prepared to submit meeting topics, contribute to the discussions and the decision-making process, and reporting out at meetings. And last, board, committee, or chapter members should expect to understand and feel comfortable using the parliamentary procedure, which we're going to cover in just a moment. First here we have an infographic. This includes the tips on running an effective meeting and also goes over a few things that we just covered here in these last few minutes. So again, following up within 24 hours. Here, again, I like this, challenge ideas rather than people. We don't want to personally attack anybody because of their opinion, but really, you know, agree to disagree respectfully. We want to be sure that we're prepared, we're arriving early, emailing an agenda out early also really helps us to make sure that the meeting will be effective and we can be productive during that time. So I'll pause again here. Are there any questions about anything that we've covered at this time? I see we're getting some comments here in chat. Oh, wonderful. So Donna, going back to meeting engagement, she gives out prizes for those who participate and speak up. That's a great incentive. I'm sure that gets them really engaged also, knowing they're going to get something in return, right? And then here we have some comments from Leonard, stating they have their board meeting in a circle of 15 to 25, so everybody's in the front row. That's great. And then everybody can see everybody, which I always think is nice too, that you're maintaining that eye contact, and people are able to see that, you know, they have that attention. And then Leonard also stated they send out their agenda 1 week in advance. That's great also. And I've seen that done with boards. I know a lot of time boards will have a number of documents they need to read through, so the more time we can give them, the better. Those are all great practices. Thank you for sharing those. All right, here. And let's keep going. So now we're going to dive into parliamentary procedure. For those of you not familiar with that, parliamentary procedure is a set of rules for conduct at meetings that allows everyone to be heard and to make decisions without confusion. It allows the group to conduct business in an orderly fashion and gives every member a chance to be heard regardless of their opinion. It addresses one subject at a time, and when it comes to voting, the majority rules. It also keeps meetings civil during those times of sensitive discussion matters. That's important. Sometimes things can get heated, so parliamentary procedure really gives us an orderly fashion or a guide to use so things don't get out of control. So once the meeting has been called to order and you wish to discuss a particular topic or it's time to vote, you're going to start by, so we're going to just walk through the parliamentary procedure here a little bit step by step. So you'll start by obtaining the floor, and you can do this either by rising out of your chair depending on the setting. So if you're in the audience, you can stand up if this is typical practice of your chapter, or you can simply ask the chair for the floor. Typically, the chair will acknowledge the member, and they'll give them the floor and the opportunity to speak. So at that time, once you have the floor, this is the time you'll be able to make your motion. You can simply say, I move that we, depending on what you have to say. And again, here there's some examples of other ways to present a motion. It really just depends on what you'd like to accomplish. So for example, here, if you want to introduce new business, if you want to hold off on taking an action or voting on a motion, if you want to object to a procedure or the way something is being handled. You'll see here on the right-hand side, there's different sorts of introductions to the motion or what you'd like to say. So again, if you're introducing new business, you would say, I move that we, say for example, hold our fall meeting on October 30th. Or if you wanted to table a motion and discuss it at a later time, I move that we table the motion to move the fall meeting to October 30th. So again, these examples here are just specific ways that will allow you to direct the discussion. And I just want to mention here that I'm going to be sending out a parliamentary procedure guide following this presentation, probably sometime early next week. And it will include this information that you see here along with some other useful tips. So you'll have the opportunity to become familiar with these terms and when to use them and feel comfortable using them. So let's go back here to presenting the motion. So once you've made your motion, you'll need to wait for someone to second your motion. And they can do this simply by saying second. If nobody speaks up, the chair will then call for a second. If there is no one to second your motion, unfortunately, it's lost. So there's nothing more you can do about that. Now, if there is a second to the motion, the chairman states your motion and then we'll call for discussion. There may be discussion, there may not. If there is discussion, it may result in either an amended motion, tabled motion. It may take a completely different direction. You might have to discuss the motion at a different time. If there is no discussion, typically next the chair would put the motion to a vote and simply ask all in favor. They would state the motion. They would have some sort of voting procedure in place, and that might vary from chapter to chapter. Once the vote takes place, the chair would then announce the results of the vote, whether the motion has passed or failed. So I know I kind of threw a lot out there. Does anybody have any questions about how to present a motion, how to bring it to the floor? No? I know it seems like it's a very formal process, but you know, again, we really want to view parliamentary procedure as just a guide to make sure that we're addressing all of the topics in our agenda, that we're allocating the proper amount of time, and that everybody is given the opportunity to express their opinion. I don't want you to get too caught up in the formality of it. All right, well, let's keep going. So as we discussed in the last step of the motion presentation, there's an actual voting on the motion, and there are really a few ways that you can do this. It'll just depend on what your board prefers. Members can vote by voice, so the chairman would ask those in favor, and they would say aye, and those opposed would say no or nay. And then depending on the size of the group, whether or not you can gauge that vote, the voice by voice, any member can request an exact count. And for more of those votes that require an exact count, you could use roll call. And this is when each member would reply with a yes or no once their name is called. And this is a method that we use when we want to record a person's vote or a vote is required. You can also use general consent. This is when a motion is not likely to be imposed. Typically something like passing the meeting minutes. The chairman says if there's no objection, and the membership would show their agreement just by silence, so by not saying anything. However, if even one member objects, then it does have to be put up for a vote, and then again, majority rules in this case. We can use division, and this is a slight verification of voice vote. It doesn't require a count unless the chairman desires. The members can raise their hand or stand, and again, majority rules. We can also use ballot. So members would write their vote on a slip of paper, and this method is really used if we want to keep votes anonymous or keep something secret. And I just want to mention here that within a board meeting, in order for motions to pass, there must be a quorum. A quorum is the minimum number of members that must be present at any of its meetings to make the proceedings of the meetings valid. So if that number happens to be that your board requires 5 people and only 3 people are there, any of the votes that take place are not valid. You would need the 5 people there in order to have a vote. And of course, this just depends on the size of your chapter as well as your board. But again, here, majority rules with parliamentary procedure. So any questions about voting? No, it's fairly simple, but again, I just want to be sure that everybody is aware of the different ways they can go about that. Okay, let's keep going. And so during all of this, the meeting's taking place, we also need to be keeping notes or minutes as to what took place during the meeting. Minutes are typically taken by the secretary, and they should follow the agenda or in the order items are discussed. Sometimes things move around or naturally occur. Minutes should always include the date, the location of the meeting, and the time. We want to be sure we list all the officers in attendance as well as the membership attendance numbers. And you could also list officers that are not present, or again, if you happen to have staff there. Clearly state all motions, including who proposed the motion, who seconded the motion, as well if it was approved or if it failed, or tabled in some cases. You can also use the minutes to serve as a follow-up guide as well as a reminder of assigned task deadlines. And we only want to report items that are voted on. An actual vote tally should also be in the official minutes. We don't need the discussion or who said what if it's not valid to the motion. And of course, minutes should be written immediately follow the meeting and sent to the meeting chair for approval prior to sending them out to the remaining board or members. And then here, of course, is an example of the minutes, and this template can also be found under Anfp Connect in the volunteer resources under the sample template section. Again, here you see your members that are present, those that are not present. You're following the time that all of these actions took place or portions of the agenda took place. And here, just very short and sweet to the point, who made the motion, what it was, the motion carried anonymously, who seconded it. So just very clean and simple and something easy to refer to if ever necessary. So any questions here about minutes, how motions are voted upon, how they should be formulated? No? We'll check the chat maybe, see if anybody has anything. Okay. All right. So well, we're going to have this presentation posted next week on the YouTube channel. I would encourage any of your fellow volunteers that weren't able to be here today to view this if they're not familiar with parliamentary procedure. Maybe they're not familiar with meeting minutes or really any of the other things we discussed for running an effective meeting. And then, of course, as we're approaching the new volunteer year, I would also encourage your new volunteers to view the presentation. You can include this as part of your onboarding process as well. We really want our chapters to be following the parliamentary procedure, making sure they understand it and feel comfortable using it. And so, of course, speaking of new volunteers, we just ask that you mark your calendar for Tuesday, June 21st at 2 p.m. Central Time for our next chapter chat. We will be giving chapters overview. So this next chapter chat is geared for new volunteers. However, if you need a refresher, please feel free to join us. We're going to be discussing a number of items, including role assignments, the affiliate agreement and bylaws, our rebate requirements and chapter awards, some necessary items like setting up chapter accounts, the chapter portal, of course, Anfp Connect and Volunteer 101. So keep an eye out for those call details. If there are no further questions, that's it for us today. I hope everybody has a safe and fun holiday weekend.
Thank you.
Thank you. You too. Thank you.
Have a great weekend.
Bye-bye.
Bye.